So today we're talking about lead generation. We're going to be talking about the overlooked lead generation tactics that you're going to really enjoy. You might even love investing some time and energy and trying them out in 25 if you haven't done them. So I'm going to dive right in. I'm actually going to pull up a little visual aid. So I'm going to share a little bit and then I'm going to kick out because I don't want this to be a big slide share activity. So let me. Um, okay, so now what we do when we have these events is we actually make these slides available with the event replay. So those of you in the room, after the event, you're going to get a little message in a few days that'll be like, hey, thank you so much for joining. And you can access this as well as the registration questions that we asked the people who signed up for the event. Now, normally I might share that. I'm actually not going to share it today, but I will add them to this deck so you guys can see what folks are saying. And we even have, you'll see it when you join the replay. And we even have a survey that we're doing on lead generation. I think we've got a couple of hundred responses. It might be less. But that'll be available to you too. So I know you're like, I already attended this meeting. I don't need to watch the replay, but you might actually gain access to some other data that you'll find really useful. And so I encourage you to check it out. All right. So there are lots of ways to generate leads, right? We all know this. But there are only a few that really deliver some quality. That's the number one challenge for marketers and sellers is how do you get quality leads and come in as a flow? And you need a lot of leads, as we all know, in order to get a few sales, right? Because people don't just meet you and then buy something. And even if they just meet your product, let's say you don't sell tech or you don't sell consulting service, you sell a consumable, skincare products or something like that, even if they meet your product, there's competition. People like to do research. They discover, research, try, buy. Um, and so there's a whole journey that they have to go through. So how do you generate enough leads and you can progress them through that funnel and then actually get some sales? So the four things that often get overlooked, the number one is integrated marketing or cross-channel, full funnel, 360. There's a lot of names for it. But integrated strategies where you have an audience, a specific audience, it usually starts with a data list that you can deploy on email or SMS, for example, or both, and that you take that known universe and you push it out across all your channels so that some of those same people are seeing your ads and your message and your creative and your content and all your points of conversion in multiple channels. So you're surrounding them. That's like that 360 approach. Now, a lot of people think that you can do full funnel without having a data list, building a discrete known audience. And some people do that. So they might use like, upper funnel tactics, like, maybe with videos and other things where people engage. And that creates a retargeting pool, and they might have lots of different little retargeting pools or even big retargeting pools that they're building in digital media. And then those retargeting pools progress down to mid funnel where you're trying to drive a conversion. And then that is what gets you to your lower funnel where you drive your conversion. That's a common all digital approach to like an integrated strategy. But see, that's not integrated from Nico's world, if that matters to you, because that's all digital, right? There are lots of channels. There your seller channels. So you might have salespeople that are talking to people. You might have offline channels like live events, or you might have a retail store or physical location. There are lots of channels that aren't only digital, and an integrated strategy is actually going to really integrate those different channels. So you've got a single pane of intelligence, and that would be that data. That's your known universe. I find email is a really great foundational tactic to use as your baseline for your integrated marketing strategies. And so that means you really focus in on either acquiring data and managing it, or you hire a partner like us. There are other companies that do email as a service. We call it audience as a service because that's cuter. Ah. Um, but you might hire a company that does that, and they manage an audience for you, and they activate all kind of different signals like intent traffic, technology usage. There's loads of signals you can activate in a known data set. So that's number one. It's really a big one. And if you aren't, really diving into that data and really thinking about how you innovate, defining the known portion of your audience, then I strongly, strongly encourage you to spend some time and resources on it in 25, and I would love to help you. Okay, what's number two? Hyper personalization. Oh my gosh, that's my little thing this year. And actually, people are starting to talk about it too. What the heck is hyper personalization? That's when you actually aren't doing just big scale, broad marketing, which we all do. And it's that also works. But hyper personalization is when it's coming from probably one of your sellers, or it's ultra local, or maybe it's using a channel like SMS, which is a very personal channel. And so it's where you're really taking that extra time. It's lower, smaller scale. It's really focused on messages that probably have a lot of dynamic elements. So the message and the actual content of what's being shared to that user is very personal. You might be using some cool tech like maybe it's a conversation ad on LinkedIn, for example, or an SMS kind of chat discussion feature. There's lots of ways you can get hyper personal. I'd say the most straightforward way is if you have one or more outside sellers, senior salespeople, that you empower them with tools that are coming from them, not the company's brand, and their messages for people that they've engaged. And so they can be really personal. They know something about that company, that person, and they can craft really personal messages. Now you're like, well, these fools already do that, right? They can send emails out. Yeah, but see, sellers do other stuff, and they're not always really consistent about messaging. And so that's where the tools come in. Those tools, whether you're using, a tool in something like Salesforce, or, an alternative SFA platform where you create, personalizable messages for a seller with triggers so that that seller can have, very personal communications coming out on their behalf without them having to do too much. So hyper personalization. Again, same like with integrated strategies, it takes a lot more brain crunching. Not to say that other strategies don't take creative or brain work. It's just that these kind of strategies are a little bit harder to deploy. There's more pieces, more things to consider. They often take a lot more testing. And so as a result, because people feel like, you might feel like, I need to get in market now, baby, right? And you should. But some of these things you do it in the background, right? It's a layer that you add to your overall marketing strategy. Hyper personalization is really important if you're really trying to progress your funnel, whether it's mid or even upper funnel. If you introduce integrated strategies and hyper personalization, it's absolutely going to help you with progression. And progression is going to address that issue we talked about earlier, which is lead quality, right? So it's going to help you get better leads. All right, what's number three? Refreshing creative and unexpected platforms. So it's not the refreshing creative that's the overlooked tactic. It's the unexpected platforms for some sparkle, right? So what are some unexpected platforms? Reddit. People are talking about Reddit. Reddit is just a dang mosh pit. Okay, I get it. And the people are spicy, and they go there with a spicy mindset. It can be a hostile environment. If in some scenarios, but Reddit ads have been really focused. They built out some really great ad tools. It's got probably one of the best engagement profile out of all of the different social networks. It's a smaller one, but there are some really great case studies and some really success stories. There are lots of other unexpected places, whether it's X, which isn't new if you think about Twitter, but X in and of itself is kind of new. There's Blue Sky, there's True Social, there's TikTok, there's Rumble. There are new places where you could go to present your brand if that environment is right for your target audience. And depending on what you are selling and trying to drive for a conversion, there might even be other places like Kick or Twitch, that you might not be in today. So for a lot of our clients are tech companies, small tech companies, and the conversation I have with them a lot is about Facebook/Instagram. So from an advertiser's perspective, it's a unified ad tool set. So whether you're going to push your ads into Facebook or you're going to push them into Instagram or both, it's the same ad environment. And so that would be where I would strongly encourage you, if you're not advertising there and you're focused on what you believe are B2B channels like LinkedIn, for example, which is great. I would strongly encourage you to try out Facebook and Instagram, actually both, because it's massive. They've got very sophisticated ad tools, and the cost per click, your yield per dollar spent is going to be significantly higher if you invested in Meta, their suite versus other options. I wouldn't recommend you replace it. It's an additive um, tactic, but they've got lead gen ads that will actually generate actual leads, with details for conversion. They've got event ads. They've got a huge array of ad types that you can integrate into your current marketing strategy and even create new ads that create new conversions that could be highly effective. And even though Facebook might not be the most popular, it's the biggest network, but people might not spend as much time in Facebook as they may have done in the past, especially if you're selling business solutions. Us older folk, we like old school social. So, we're probably for the most part there. And, when you can use matched audiences and, retargeting things, you can reach your specific customer. So if your objection was, well, I can't reach my business audience in Facebook, you can. There's just different ways you do it. All right, last one, and then I'm going to stop sharing. Number 4, physical interaction. So we talked earlier about a common structure for an all digital funnel, right? For full funnel marketing. But as I mentioned, that's only digital, and there's lots of different channels. And right now, for the last few years, digital has been the thing. And so everybody's dumped all their money into digital. And actually, as a result of the pandemic and the lockdown, loads of people shifted everything to digital. So now we're coming 5 years out of that, and people are starting to, I won't say fatigue on digital, but there is such a thing as ad fatigue, digital ad fatigue. So physical interactions are becoming important again for some spice. Bam, if you're Emeril Lagasse, right, you're going to spice it up and interject physical interactions into your marketing strategy, your overall channel mix. And so a really easy one is postal. So postal's lost favor over the years because, the metrics on it and the tracking, the measurement and the monitoring didn't seem as luxurious as you might be used to for digital ads. But there's been a lot of developments. There are lots of things you can do, whether it's QR codes, vanity URLs, special redemption paths, you name it. There's loads of ways where you can also get really strong, very accurate attribution metrics if you're doing physical interactions, particularly postal. And there's loads of postal providers have evolved and emerged. And so there's lots of them that can, do really dynamic, personalized elements on like a postcard or a letter or you name it. And so I would strongly encourage you to look at postal this year. You'd be surprised at what the budgets are. They're not as big as you might be used to, especially if you're using postal as an element in your progression strategy. So, you might be using it for lower funnel opportunities where they've converted on digital. They've had some sort of digital interaction. You know who they are. You've got a profile on them. And then you might choose a small number, 100 in a month. You send them a gift, a gift card, a treat, a local item, something to delight them, and it's part of your strategy. And then you pair that up with your sellers who will follow up on that kind of stuff. It creates it all kind of maps together, right? It becomes hyper personal, an opportunity for your sellers to follow through with people, and it just becomes some perks. So those are the 4 often overlooked lead gen tactics that when I work with clients and I consult with them and I work with them to develop strategies, that these are the things that they're not often focusing on. So integrated strategies that usually focus on foundational data, hyper personalization, unexpected platforms, and physical interaction. So to chit chat and see, ooh, I got some stuff in the chat. I think it's my host that is welcoming everyone. Thank you. I'm gonna keep the chat open so that I can see if you guys have any questions. If you have a question, drop it in the chat and I'll see it and I'll answer it. And like I said, you can raise your hand if you're in the live session and you want to ask a question live or you want to say something in the panel. Otherwise, you can post it in the chat. But let's talk about it. What did I just talk about? So, tips and tricks, because that's what these discussions are for. You guys might be skilled marketers and you're already doing stuff. You obviously are already doing stuff. The purpose of this conversation is really to give you some ideas on some things that you might not have yet tried and to share some perspectives so that when you do try it, it goes smoother, easier, and you get more results faster. So as you know, we run huge lead generation campaigns. We generate probably tens of thousands of leads a year, literally, for ourselves and for our clients, mostly for our clients. And we use a lot of different chat tactics. And what you'll see that was not on the list was live people, right? Like agents. We use a lot of highly skilled live agents that speak with people. That's an important part of it. But these four tactics are ones that are really important in our overall strategy. So number one, the data, that's so important. Your core marketing data, so you have a known universe. Think about it. A lot of people have shifted their spend, and if you're one of those people, I totally get it. You might have shifted all your dollars to do LinkedIn ads, for example. And you might be getting great results. You're driving a lot of traffic, you're getting some downloads or some conversions, maybe your phone is ringing, you might be feeling really satisfied, and I'm sure it's a great campaign. The only challenge with that though is you just don't know who you're talking to. So you're relying on LinkedIn to serve up your ads to people who fit your targeting, and they've got really great tools to pick exactly the type of people you want to talk to. The only problem with that is if you have, for example, customers that you don't want to see an ad, or maybe suppliers or partners or things like that, people that you want to exclude, there's extra steps to take. And a lot of people do that. They set up exclusionary lists, to exclude from their digital ads. But my challenge for you is to actually do the counterpoint to that, which is to create a target list and upload that into your ad platforms. The match rates will vary. So LinkedIn usually has a really solid match rate if you are doing business to business advertisements. And you have a really high match rate, 80% or higher. And then that way you can serve up ads to really specific people. But really, the reason why you'd want to do it is because you're probably communicating via email because and I'm gonna share some data again. What we find is email is actually a common way that people want to be talked to. I think it's 3/4 of business people say that they really would like to, meet or be engaged via email. Hold on, let me get this. So here's some trends. So, 70% of marketers say social media is really helping them generate more leads, like I talked about. But the thing is, and then 3/4 of people say your buyer says they really like to get email from you to hear from you. And email is a whole nother thing. And we're going to do a session on email because it has become a whole nother different type of thing, y'all. Okay. But the thing is, you got your social ads. Maybe you're doing email, but they might not be connected. And that's really what the missed opportunity is. And that's because the overwhelming majority, almost 96% of website visitors, when they get your social ad or they receive your email and they go to your website, they're not ready to take that relationship further yet. They're just meeting you, right? This is the first date. You're at the door with the flowers and the candy, right? Or maybe you're at the speed dating session and you have 5 minutes to chat, so they're not really ready to give you the wedding ring, right? They just started. So what do you do to build the relationship? You hear that theme a lot. If you join my Growing Happily series, or you hit our website and you check out our on-demand library, um, you hear I talk about it a lot. We're building relationships here. Whether you're building business to business relationships and you're talking to business people, or you're building business to consumer relationships and you're talking to people about their personal lives, it doesn't matter. It's still the relationships. They're getting to know you, you're getting to know them. And having that data list is so critically important, and integrating them, right? Multi-channel marketing campaigns, and really what I mean is integrated, right? Is critical, because not only do they lower the average cost per lead, but what they do is they ensure that the people you're emailing are also seeing your ads. Because as we know, not everybody opens emails, and if they open it, they might not click. And so having the ad actually amplifies the email, and having the email actually amplifies the ad. We've done a lot of testing on this. Loads of other people have done testing on it. And what they found is there's a really strong interaction between the two, to engage in both. Well, why? Because it's part of a journey, right? They saw you here, and they saw you over there. They grabbed a couple seconds of your message here. They grab a couple more seconds of your message there. And so now they've got a bigger picture, and they're much more likely to convert. So then what do you do? Like, you're like, okay, all right, I get it. I'm gonna be doing this whole cross channel thing, Nico, right? And I need that data. So then what do you do? Well, when you've got that really detailed database, and I call it a known audience. It's super easy when you're doing business to business. Acquiring data is really easy when you're doing business to business. When I say easy, it's not easy, nor is it cheap. But what I mean is, you can go, there are data partners out there, ZoomInfo, Apollo, Sales Intel, Cognism, Mountaintop Data, Outward Media, or OMI. There's loads of them. There's so many, and they're all really have something great about what they have. They've got these huge databases, hundreds of millions of vetted, validated data, and it's really easy to pick it for business purposes. But how do you be like, I need to find a list of all the redheads in Nebraska, right? That's harder. So when it comes to consumer data, it's a little bit harder to marry email and social media, but you can start to marry a different parameter like SMS, right? Like I was talking about, where you might be hyper personalized. There are ways that you can create, inputs where you can start to build a list, a newsletter audience, you name it, and there are audiences you can plug into. So, there are different ways where you can create that known universe. And then the last thing is content marketing. So, um, and then I'm gonna stop sharing for a little bit, but content marketing is so important. And it's one of those things, it's not on my list because most of us do it, right? We produce some kind of content. This session is a great example. It'll not only is a great way for me to interact with you guys, and thank you guys again for joining me in the room, but it's also a really great way. It turns into videos, it turns into social posts, it turns into clips, shorts, it turns into all sorts of stuff. So, producing content, whether it's video content or other kinds of content, is really critical to share thought leadership. So, and that thought leadership is what's important. But let me give you a lens on that. One of the things that I've challenged myself with, and I want to see if you guys will get on board with me on this, is in social media, what I am challenging myself and my social media team is to not talk about us. So we will talk about, if we're doing stuff, right? Oh, we've got this event that you can attend, we've got this new research study that you can access, right? So something for you. But that the challenge that I've placed is that social media is not about how great we are or what awards we won or anything like that. And I'm not saying that those things aren't good to communicate on social. But our challenge is to see for the next 6 months if our social media can really be about you, right? About the people who are engaging with it. Maybe it's tips and tricks. Maybe it's questions that we spark in your mind, ideas that we help you start to stew on. So it's not self-serving. Um, but how does that play into content? Well, content marketing is really an opportunity for you to share your thought leadership and to share all your knowledge or some of your knowledge for the benefit of the person who's engaging with your content. And so, again, it's that challenge. A lot of us do that. We create different ad units and content pieces. But I always want to remind you, the more you know about your audience and the more that have that central vein of data where you really know who your audience is, then you can start to create content that'll benefit them, what's helpful for them, rather than content pieces that serve your interest, right? And I get it. You're like, I'm trying to sell stuff. Yes, we are trying to sell stuff. But really, the whole desire is if you change your perspective and not try to just sell all the time, but instead build relationships, then what you're going to find is you'll create probably different content than you would if your principal goal is to try and convince people to do business with you. What I find is that if you don't try to convince them and you really just show them how awesome you are, by sharing your knowledge and sharing your energy and your vibe and your thought leadership, then you don't have to sell them. They kind of come to you on their own. Okay, so we talked about how that integrated marketing is so important, and that really goes down to data and having a known universe. This is tough, okay? But that takes me to my last thing that I'm gonna share with you guys today, which is how come, these Nico, all right, so let's say I agree with you. So here we go. All right, so well, how come these tactics are overlooked? And well, so I would say to you guys, have y'all overlooked any of these four tactics? Integrated marketing, with that known universe, hyper personalization, unexpected channels, like a Facebook, Instagram, a TikTok, a Truth, a Blue Sky, you name it. And postal, physical interactions. Are you already doing all those things? If you are, please raise your hand. Woo woo, and you can join in and talk too. If you're not, well, how come? How come you're not doing it? Well, I get it, baby. I really get it. Um, these things can be a little bit harder, like that integrated marketing where you're using matched audiences, like I talked about. It means you have to have a solid source for valid data and you got to manage it, right? It's a lot of data management, and you might not have analysts on staff, or you're too big, you've got a lot of other things that you're doing that are driving results for you today, and so you don't want to divert resources to do something that's new. Completely get it. But I challenge you to try it out. You could work with us, you could work with somebody else, that if you try an integrated campaign that's cross channel, and really integrated, and you've got a known audience that's being touched by multiple channels, that you'll see a higher yield. You'll see an improved yield, and really, what you're going to be looking at is lead quality. You're going to see more quality leads that are going to be further along their progression path when you first see them, when they get added into your lead gen, when they convert, and you'll be able to progress them more effectively because you're going to have more signals and more data around your interactions with them. So that's number one, why those integrated marketing where you're using matched audiences, why they get overlooked, because it's a little bit hard. And like I said, this is something we do on an ongoing basis. So we could help you jumpstart that if you wanted to try it. We could even do a micro campaign for you to show you the archetypes or the structure, some frameworks that work well for us, and help you create frameworks for yourself. But absolutely worth the extra effort, you guys, to create that kind of known universe that you really work on and you build a lot of intelligence around it. So why is hyper personalization so hard? Well, I think we all can kind of think that through, is that it's just harder to create those messages, especially if they've got dynamic elements in them, and to draft it so that it feels a little bit more personal. It's harder to get the data so you can personalize it. You might not have set up your deployment strategy. Like, let's say you have email systems, you might have a unified brand, from your company that's the face of that email system, and creating alternative senders like for specific salespeople might not be something that you've done yet. It takes a little bit of time, takes some management. It can make you feel like all your campaigns get fractured. So all those are things that you might have experienced and that I've heard from clients. They're they will be fractured. So yes, the way you're feeling is absolutely true, and it is true, but that's actually the goal. The goal is to fracture those big audiences and have them come from people where you really want the interaction to live, like a seller, for example, and for you to gather as many signals about that potential future customer as you can, so that you can talk to them in a way that's really personal and based on their interaction with you. Now, other ways for hyper personalization is obviously, and folks might be doing this and you might be doing this, is, maybe you're integrating AI into your um, conversational infrastructure, your chat bots, your email systems, things like that, so you can have these AI powered intelligent conversations. Well, that's where hyper personalization can be extremely powerful. That goes back to number one, which is that's where having that known database where you're collecting a lot of signals and tracking that and you're keeping those signals up to date becomes extremely powerful, so that when your AI conversational tools are interfacing with those clients, when they're on your site, maybe you have a pop-up, or a proactive chat, that might pop and say, hey, do you have any questions? Or when they're emailing service, or support area, or even a sales inbound, you name it, that there's going to have a lot of intelligence there. That is all. Those two things are tied together, and by having that database, you'll be better equipped to have hyper personal conversations with those people, and your AI will have an infrastructure to pull more data to be more effective when those people engage with them. All right, number two, unexpected spaces. So how come people aren't doing it? Well, because a lot of people might feel like it's risky, and I'm gonna use one that I think a lot of you guys will appreciate. Is Truth Social is a great example. New social network, associated with, a very, polarizing, figure that we all know who is, but we shall not name, like Voldemort, right? um, and so a lot of advertisers are like, oh, I'm gonna steer away from it for one reason or another, right? But the thing is it has a specific user group that is well engaged, very great engagement metrics. So if that audience is aligned with yours, in terms of who's there, and there's lots of different kinds of users in that environment, um, then that's a great platform for you to get on, and I would encourage you to do so. One of the things, if you feel like, oh, being in a Truth Social might seem like a political statement, one way to avoid that kind of a thing and to get into more of these unexpected spaces is to just go everywhere, right? And that's actually a lot of times for clients that have the ability and they can use social media management tools so it becomes manageable for them, is to just be everywhere, right? LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, X, Truth, Blue Sky, right? And whatever else pops up. If you're if you're doing business around the globe, there might be Babo, or, there's other, um, uh, what is it? The Buy-in Corf, there's different places, in different countries, social ad platforms, social networks, and, just places where people coalesce digitally. There's different places where you could be. And my recommendation for you is, use social media management tools like Hootsuite or Loomly or Buffer or, oh, Social Vista. There's so many. You use those different tools to make it easier so you can be in all places, and have an active brand position in many places. The way I would suggest it is to think of it as it's not a political statement. It's simply going where a particular type of future customer might be, and they might be spending time there. Reddit is another good example. It's important to know how each network operates, what the different post styles are, what's the common, I guess you could say, etiquette in that environment. And a lot of times it's very similar. At the end of the day, I'd say all humans want to be heard, respected, and regarded. So as long as you do that, and that's your strategy, then you can kind of be in any of them. I would encourage you to be in as many of them as you can manage. So then that way, if you're in ones like X or Truth, where people might perceive that as a political statement, that it will be less political because your whole position is, hey, I just want to be everywhere. And so that's a solution there. Unexpected spaces. Keep an eye out because new places might pop up. What's hot starts to rotate. Depending on your customer segment, there's other places that I didn't mention, like WhatsApp and stuff like that, that you might weave into your strategy where appropriate. But either way, I would always encourage you, twice a year, depending on how active you are as a marketer, maybe it's even once a quarter, have a look at the different environments, see how they've evolved, and determine if, that is a place where you want to test it out and you just start small. Other unexpected spaces, especially if you sell physical goods, so you're B2C and you're selling physical goods or other items like that. Netflix and Amazon both have introduced advertiser tools in the last 18 months, like maybe 2 years, and they're really becoming more sophisticated. They're not by no means what you might be used to if you're advertising in a Facebook, for example, or Google. I didn't even mention Google because everybody's doing Google, right? But they're not in at that league, but they are solid, solid advertiser tools, great reporting, and those are becoming new big scale ad platforms, especially for B2C, but that's not to say that you couldn't be there for B2B. It would require more of number one, right? So you're going to really make sure you like got really great retargeting and matched audiences and a really great data strategy, so you're not wasting your ad dollars by spooling your content or your creative in front of people who are just not business buyers. So unexpected spaces. Last one. Well, how come this one is overlooked? Physical tactics. And that's because the last few years there's been such a focus on digital only. And digital only is probably more straightforward. I don't use the word easy because I don't know anything that's easy except for maybe passing a wind. But even that can have its problems. So, but straightforward, right? Straightforward. So digital tactics are often very straightforward. They're super seductive with all their metrics and analytics and reports. And so physical tactics might feel lackluster. They might feel old school, and they might feel, backward. But like I said, my challenge to you as other sellers and marketers is to explore what's going on today, because there's some new providers out there that focus on physical tactics like postal, for example, logo items, you name it. There's a lot of advanced and more sophisticated interactions that you could use starting with a physical tactic like a postal piece. There's lots of ways that you can get, analytics from that and tracking, where you can get really solid metrics, and those things can integrate really well into your current digital strategies. You could integrate postal into a digital strategy, so you're sending it, like I mentioned earlier, only to lower funnel. You could, if you have a really hard segment that's hard to reach, but you've got great postal data, you can use postal to identify and get signals from a potential buyer and then have digital take over from there. There's loads of ways to peel that banana, and it really depends on your business. But what I would say is that physical tactics can become a really great part of your overall marketing strategy, especially if it's integrated. And it all goes back to, what are those challenges you're trying to solve. So the last bit that I'll share with you guys, and again, remember, raise your hand, or post a question in the chat if you want to. Today is a big old data dump. And what I encourage you to do is, after you've had a chance to go, whew, right, and you've absorbed it all and you're thinking about it, hit me up. I'm absolutely available. I spend a lot of times with each client. There's no client too small. There's no prospect too small. There's no business too small that I wouldn't spend my time with you, because I just love small businesses. I've been running them for 2 decades, running small businesses for over 2 decades. And I've been advising companies on how to support, nurture, and grow small businesses for 3 decades, because I know I started when I was right out of the womb. So how do you overcome these 4 challenges? Why you might have overlooked or avoided one of these 4 really effective lead gen tactics that can absolutely improve your lead quality, lead yield, and lead volume for your existing activities if you integrated them in. So here's some ways you can overcome those challenges. Absolutely find a data partner that can handle audience building and extensions. There are lots of different data partners. I mentioned some who provide data and even digital tools, Zoom Info, you name it, right? Apollo, Cognism, Sales Intel. That's a new one that we started to work with. They're amazing. I love them. Um, or Outward Media, we've worked with them forever, and they're also really amazing. Mountaintop Data, work with a data partner. They each one have different things that they have. Outward Media, for example, has business to business and business to consumer lists that are integrated, so you can actually reach business people in their personal spaces, which is actually appropriate these days, and vice versa. You can reach consumers in business spaces, and same thing. Depends on what you're selling. So finding a partner is really important. Data is becoming more complex. The way you build audiences, you manage them, the way you activate signals, the way you integrate in other data, the way you can enrich that data, rotate it, manage it is actually really a skill set. And it's probably not one that you want to focus on if that's not the nature of your business. So I actually would say it's better to find a partner than to try and go it on your own. And we could be a good partner. That's something we do. We know everybody, we work with everybody, and so we work together to create that audience. And like I said, we call it audience as a service. Number two, start small. So this is across the board in anything that you do, especially if it's not something you're doing regularly. Just start really small. I know loads of people will be like, "Oh, spend 10,000, spend 5,000, spend 1,000, whatever." Right? They tell you got to spend a certain amount of money to get any yield at all, and that's actually true. But what I would say is this: if you've targeted your audience well, then you could spend, I don't know, $100, $50 to reach some number of them, and you should be able to see some amount of conversions. My belief is that your conversion ratio should be a factor of 100 or 1,000, right? So let's say it's 1,000, so it's like, what would that be? 0.001%, right? So you have a less than a percent, less than 1%, a tenth of a percent. Let's say that's your conversion ratio, which in some cases might even be high. But let's say your conversion ratio is a tenth of a percent. So that's 1 in 1,000 is going to convert. Well, for $50, baby, on Facebook, you could reach more than 1,000 people, right? You might even reach 5 or 6,000 people for, that kind of a budget, 50 or $100 for like a single image ad or something like that. So based on that, then you should be able to see some conversions, and you will. We did a test last year on Go Big on Social. Go look it up. It's on our on-demand library, where we spent $100 on Facebook, 100 on LinkedIn, 100 on X, 100 on Reddit. We actually overspent on Reddit, but we calculated everything down to 100. We standardized it at 100. And for that, I mean, on Facebook, we got like 81,000 impressions, I think, and oh gosh, over 1,000, like 1,200 or something page visits or something like that. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head because I'm an old lady. It was a year ago, or getting close to a year ago. But it was big numbers, well over 1,000 impressions. Hundreds of visits to our target landing page. And so that why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that because you don't have to create a campaign in one of these unexpected spaces or in an integrated tactic and think that you have to start and spend 10 grand. You could start really small and spend $100, for example, on paid media in a particular channel and actually see real results. And then you could use that as your control group to test and optimize, spend a couple $100 the next time as you're going through optimization, and then determine how you want to scale from there. And that's the most important thing that I want to share with you guys is just start really small. Start small with hyper personalization. Start small with your ad budgets in these unexpected spaces. And as you've figured it out, you've set up your programs, you set up your tools, you're deploying it, you're trying it out, you're seeing some results. You might not even have any conversions, but you're seeing interactions. Then you can start to optimize. You might be saying, well, I have very little time. I'm super busy. We had to downsize. We only have, I have one less person or something like that. It's actually going to be I think what you're going to find is if you do these things, it'll actually enrich what you're doing elsewhere. It'll give you new perspectives. It'll give you new insights on progressing and engaging your audiences in other spaces, common spaces where you're an expert already. It'll just give you more perspective because I hope we all agree that, this whole thing of building relationships, meeting new customers, meeting new people, starting that journey to progress them to becoming a customer and keep them as a customer is actually a complex, multifaceted, ongoing, long tail, lifelong activity. And it's constantly changing. New experiences, new spaces, new interactions, new opportunities always change the dynamics. And so us as marketers and sellers, it is always beneficial for us to try things out so that we can get new perspectives and keep it fresh, keep it good, right? Okay, last thing, and then I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'll see if anybody has any questions. And I think we're probably just about at time. Yeah, we're just about at time, is physical tactics. So, and I mentioned this earlier. So physical tactics can be really expensive, especially if you're doing like a in-person event. So maybe you want to do, and I know back, especially in tech companies, 4 or 5 years ago, that was the hot thing. You do a lunch and learn at Ruth's Chris, or maybe a breakfast at, some fancy hotel or resort or something like that. And so that was an upper funnel tactic. So you would invite people to attend this really, delectable live interaction, spend 10, 15, $18,000 for it, maybe get 16 or 17 people in the room, and they're going to come even though they don't know you, because they know the location and they're like, oh, that's great. Free lunch, free breakfast, free dinner, networking, drinks, or whatever, right? And that's the appeal. Well, baby doll, that pandemic has changed all social norms, and people don't even play around like that anymore. And so what we find is that if you're trying to do upper funnel for a live event, for example, not live, what I mean is an in-person event, you're going to you're going to struggle, right? That's what we see. Loads of our clients have struggled. You struggle getting people in the room when they don't know you. So what do? You focus on people that do know you. You use your really effective digital marketing where you've got some conversions, you've got some signals, you've seen some interest, and then you can use an in-person experience like an event, like a live event, to bring them as part of your progression process. So they've talked to you, they've engaged with you, maybe they know a little bit about you, and it's not just the first time they're seeing your brand. I would actually encourage you to think about it completely differently. And I wouldn't even, this is me, right? And whatever you're doing, if it's working for you, I'm so excited for you and I'm sure it's amazing. But if you haven't and you're struggling with it, you're struggling with these in-person activities, right? An in-person event, a happy hour, a mixer, a lunch and learn, a breakfast session, and you've struggled to get people in the room. Well, baby, I would suggest you change the whole script, okay? And this would be my last little insight for you. Instead of trying to use these types of activities for acquisition, use them to keep happy, delighted customers. Go deeper, right? You've already got customers, and what we find and what I find, and you got to ask yourself if you're in this camp, because I know I'm in this camp sometimes, is that my spend in terms of my marketing or sales development or whatever is actually super small when it comes to my customers, right? What? That's horrible, right? Pat, pat, we shouldn't even be doing that. We should actually, I would encourage us to spend more of our time and money on keeping happy, delighted, supported customers that we have deep, deep, rich relationships with. And those in-person interactions will be perfect for a customer, right? You have that as a customer event, a happy hour, and then you can bring in a couple, three future customers. And because when they get there and they see your existing customers and how much they love you, then they'll be like, oh my gosh, I would love it. You can also have these live interactions for your customers and then invite them to bring a buddy, because your customers often know people that could become your customer. And actually, according to, is it Sandler? They're big. sales, optimization organization, Sandler, yeah. And that was one of the things I said. I think it's like 81% of happy customers would be delighted to refer you to a potential other customer, someone that they know, if you asked. You just have to ask them. So that will be what I would say. Use your physical interactions with customers, folks that are lower in your funnel, people that you already have been building a relationship with, even if it's an early relationship, a future customer, and invest those dollars for those types of deepening activities that'll deepen your relationship that you have with these current and future customers, and use that live interaction or that physical tactic like a postal piece or a happy hour lunch and learn to really go deeper and like get them in front of your salespeople, build a real personal relationship with them where you learn about who they are and their family and their hopes, dreams, interests, hobbies, you name it. I would also encourage you to make it fun. Right? I know. Don't do what I'm doing right now, people. Get off of these slides. No slides. Right? Throw the slides in the garbage can. And if you're going to have an in-person interaction, have it be fun, not too many cocktails because you don't want people being enticed or tempted to drive drunk or something like that. But you can have it be fun, beer 30, do something fun and enjoyable. Take them to a ball game, take them to a concert, go to the aquarium. There's loads of things you could do, and or meet them at a fair, go to a trade show. There's so many things that you could try and have it align with your brand, be really interesting, and benefit those relationships you have. So, and I would love to give you ideas, grab me one on one. A lot of this is really a function of you, not a function of me. It's really about who you are and what your goals are, who your customers are, what's your strategy. And that's really what it boils down to, is what is going to work best